I want to know how many women out there feel that they don't have that sexiness, that light, and everything that you are and you're supposed to be. By this point in life, we lose who we are. We're so busy with looking after our business and caring for our kids that we lose us, the most important factor of all. So today, sit tight, listen, connect with us, and learn how you can bring yourself back to who the woman you're supposed to be. Welcome today to Let's Get Real. My name is Glenda Kroll. I am one of your hosts, and
I am Nicole Harvick. Glad to be here today. I have gone over this bio, and of course, it's very, very impressive. So I cannot wait to bring this lovely lady on stage. I met her backstage, and I can already tell this is going to be an amazing interview. She calls herself the Fire Muse. Now, I've never heard anybody call themselves that, so that intrigues me right away. And she's also an unconventional coach. Her mission is to awaken 1 million, yes, you heard me right, 1 million women to their inner brilliance. She will empower you to step into a life overflowing with love, intimacy, health, and wealth. And I would love to welcome to the stage Oksana Tsimpoaka. And I hope I said that right.
Thank you so
welcome.
much, Glenda and Nicole, and thank you everyone who is here with us today.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're excited because, too many times we all are too busy with everybody else that we forget about ourselves. We forget what we need. We need to build ourselves up and to generate who we really are. And, so I want to know how you came to this because, we all have gone through some form of journeys and it brings us into our own light. So please start by sharing with us your story.
Thank you, Glenda. So I will share my story in bits of the major events with the wisdom that is going to help you to recognize yourself as well as a woman and how to get that sass, sexiness, worthiness out of you. Right. So I was raised in a family that had very high standards in terms of, how a woman needs to be. And we went from poverty to considerate wealth. So also I'm an identical twin. And that meant for us that I was a very ambitious woman to such a degree that there is another one exactly like you trying to compete with each other because when you are in the same groups, in the same school, in the same sports, and people naturally start comparing you, you start to think, okay, I need to be better. I need to be better. I need to be better. So there was no end to when is the better going to end, right? At the age of 16, we were so burned out mentally, physically, and emotionally that we moved abroad to Germany. And first, it gave me the sense of freedom. Oh my God, I can be myself. There is no one anymore there's no one another Oksana walking around. But this sense of freedom at the age of 16, when you don't have this inner foundation in you, who you are, what do you want, right? Because you're always following the path of another person. You lose this freedom. You don't cherish it because you have no idea what to even ask for. And what does a girl at the 16 years of age do? She wants to hide. And what happens to the women, young women like that age? Anorexia, right? They starve themselves because they want to become invisible. They don't want to take the responsibility and ownership of their lives because they simply don't know how to be. So this is what happened to me. And afterwards, I went to complete another extreme because I had also ADHD and OCD. And I was a complete control freak and obsessive in sports, in school. Like we were in a cover magazine, we were in TV show, we were with my sister competing with other schools. We were learning in a foreign language and being addressed as the, very, very intelligent kids and having those private teacher for tutoring to play piano. Right, we were very raised to very high standard to when the control starts to become such a big thing, you break down. So I went to another extreme where I became an emotional eater to the point that I piled on 15 kilograms of weight, and alcohol and cigarettes, because that was never a part of my life, right? So I experienced the two extremes where in both I had no idea who I am. And when the woman lacks self-worth and doesn't have an understanding of herself beyond the success and achievements, she becomes a magnet towards men who love to stay in control and manipulate and be the abusers, right? And it's to show for you how much you are not claiming your power. So at the age of, I traveled more than 32 countries by the age of 22 in search of my happiness, which really
Wow.
literally never came to me, right? But eventually, and ended up from Greece going to Ireland, and ended up with a man who was, at the first glance, really kind, loving, a man who is there for you, a man who tells you, don't worry, I got you. So me being completely lacking my self-worth, believed those things. And then slowly after 3 months, you get the real story behind it. And sooner or later it became, if you don't not gonna show up at home after 9 p.m., I'm gonna come and get you. And if you're not doing what I'm telling you to do, you're worthless. And then he pushed the right buttons where my self-worth was the lowest. I should have chosen your sister, not you. I made the wrong choice.
Mhm.
Now you're behaving like this. And then it started becoming physical, beating up. And every time when there was something that I was afraid to do, there was constant punishment, punishment. But again, as a woman who lacks self-worth, you think like you are doing something wrong, right? So this might be a little bit triggering. So please, anyone who is watching and you're like, oh, I don't want to hear it, but it was a very important moment that turned my life upside down. Luckily, I had my brains, because one thing I did pick up from my childhood is that study, learn, and go after what you need to create the safety. And when he was very highly successful man who lost everything, and he witnessed a lot of trauma in his childhood, so he couldn't deal with it, and that alcohol was his way to deal with it, right? And abusing a person. So one day I knew I have to get out, but because of his threats, I couldn't just slip away. So I started building a network of people. I worked my ass off in the jobs, and I was promoted in IBM. That time I used to work in IBM 3 times in a year, and I was literally sought out for my skills and for my dedication. And I finished I finished the university. And when I had everything ready, Glenda, I remember your talk very much when I said, gosh, I admire so much as a woman, because I understand how you need to think strategically in those situations when
Very
there
much.
is no way out. When I had everything ready and I went to Dublin to look for apartment, but that time to get an apartment in Dublin, you have to wait in queues to just get this apartment in the city center. I just
Yeah.
walked up to this man and I said, this apartment is mine. And he said to me, Oksana, whatever it is you needed. I said, yes, I do. And I came home, and of course, he sensed something is wrong. And I started packing my bags as quickly as possible. I called my friend to come with a car, pick me up. And he was drunk, and he came up to me and he had a knife in my throat. And at
Mm.
this stage, when you've been 3 years traumatized, you become numb in your body. And
Yeah.
to the point that you realize that you're so disconnected that there is no more fear in you. You're just like, my tears were running, and something told me, look into his eyes. And I did martial arts all my life, right? I was a big in martial arts, thank God. And I looked into his eyes. And when I witnessed before power and dominance in him, and the deeper I looked straight into his soul, the more I saw pitifulness, weakness, desperation. And I realized, if you always keep running away from your own shadows, because how can a man who was so much, I was pedestaling literally him and thinking that he is somebody, within a second go to someone below me, then it means that I was the point where my perspective has changed about him,
Yeah.
because my self-worth went from this to up because I no longer was afraid. And he broke down crying, put the knife down and said, just run. And of course I ran. Didn't need to be told runs. So one lesson that I extracted from there: you can have the best achievements in the world. You can be the wisest, smartest woman in the world and the prettiest and have amazing body. But if your self-worth doesn't have a foundation, you will end up with nothing. And in the
So
most hurtful situations.
let's
Wow.
stop for a second because that's really powerful, and we need to absorb that for a minute for those that are watching. And so often in relationships, right, we we lose our own power. We get into situations where especially if you're with a man who's been successful in his life. He's put some self, never mind, on that pedestal to begin with, and then you continue on watching him from that pedestal. So right away you're already giving yourself less credit, and you're bringing the credit up to him, right? And the worst thing you can do in any relationship is, no matter who that person is or what they've achieved, is to put anybody onto a pedestal. We're still, no matter who you are or what you do in life, we're all the same. We're all human beings. Everybody has done something different in their lives and have had some success in some ways. But when we allow that to happen, and then we wonder, we start doubting ourselves and doing that. So before when you got to that point where you started seeing the change in it, when at one point did it click in? You had the strength, you had the abilities with your martial arts to protect yourself because you were in somewhat of danger. And, at what point did you began to take control of who you really were?
For me, it was really gradual. And what really helped me is to bring stability into my life, because I was new to the country. I literally moved for him to this country. The
Hmm.
more I started realizing how people treat me outside of home, in my work, in the university, and then kind people who came up and really helped me, the more I started realizing that the two and two don't get together, because that's supposed to be love, right? But people treat me better there. And I'm just starting to bring these resources back to me that I completely lacked before. The resource of self-worth, of time, where I'm putting my time, right? Of recognition, of seeing how much I'm actually giving to people and receiving back, right? So for me, it was really gradual. And I started just disassociate emotionally from the state at home,
Hmm.
and to view it more as an observer. Wow, and the more lies started coming up. So that for me was a big sign that, yeah, there's something going on here.
I love it.
Wow. And Oksana, I'm curious because you said you had an identical twin. Did she go through anything similar like you did? Because you two were raised the same in the same family in the same country?
As every person, they have very different story, right? So her story was a little bit different, but she also had quite a rough path.
Oh.
And I would say that she also got her hit through just, it really comes down to choice. When our
Mhm.
self-worth is low, our choices are very poor. So she struggled with codependencies and as well a lot of things herself too.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about that. It's quite an amazing story you're telling.
Yeah, and
So
my mom didn't know she has twins, by the way. So
Oh,
when I was born, they said, "Oh my God, you have another baby there." And
wow, that's cool.
surprise.
yes, what a surprise! Right, back then it was really hard to get identical clothes, so they had to go to Latvia to pick some to
Oh,
pick some up
wow.
as well. Yeah,
Oh, goodness.
So now you've left the relationship.
yeah.
You've managed to go. Where did you end up fleeing to?
So I moved to Dublin, and I continued on the path of my work. I was really successful in my work, and my work was always, I was brilliant at that, right? My personal life always. But I was so messed up because I didn't know how to deal with all those emotions that I need to put aside in order to start thinking clearly and really work really hard every day to bring my stability back, right? So all this guilt, grief, and shame that I took on caused me a lot of problems in my reproductive system. And that's my another point that I want to talk to women about is most of the problems that we experience, such as infertility, heavy PMS symptoms. I had anemia. I had period twice in a week, twice in a month. Sorry, I had cysts. I had in like so many things, mostly due to shame, grief, and guilt. So there was also a couple events that I don't really want to share here that happened, but all of this led me to, again, very poor choices. And eventually I came to Estonia. And in Estonia, I got a job straight away. Job was never a problem. And I started to work through my emotions bit by bit. And I felt like I'm ready to be pregnant. But the doctor said your progesterone, which is the hormone that we need to get pregnant, is 8 times lower. You need to take hormonal pills. I said, no more pills, no more any antidepressants, nothing like that. I know my baby's coming. And it happened that my baby came, my miracle son, Armin. And that's a big another extracted wisdom. Never believe everything wholeheartedly. The universal law is always so much stronger when you use your imagination and your body to feel than the actual physical problems that you're experiencing on a physical level. So after my son was born, um, it was a bit difficult times. I had very easy pregnancy. I lost even 8 kilograms during the pregnancy, which was never
Goodness.
heard of. Again, never believe what everyone tells you. Experience yourself because that's your path, right? But when he was born, my OCD kicked in really, really strong. So I was not able to sleep. And the control in my head and all those thoughts went really mental because there's such a tiny little being and you're so afraid to F it up, right? And all those scenarios that come in my, so I never slept and I developed a skin cancer
Oh,
and on my face, actually, just underneath my eye when my boy was 1 year old. And this is the part where coaching just hit me and came into my world and I started getting deeper within myself. But and my ability started opening up. I started to read people without speaking to them. I started seeing things and I started trusting that there is something beyond this physical reality. Because if I already saw that I can, in my own life, pretty much birth a baby that supposed to not to be birthed, right? Then there's something out there that I believe so much more. So from this experience, we broke up with his dad and we didn't have very there was nothing physical or nothing like that, but it was just not compatible relationship. And I met a man in 2021 and this man completely opened my whole heart to such a degree that I was like, wow, now I know what it means to be loved, seen, witnessed in all of me. And another thing that I realized is that we as humans, we strive for familiarity in order to experience this life. But really, I don't know any human being who says, you know what? I'm so super cool and I can totally love in and I can hold it and I can embrace it and it feels so good to me. Most of our bodies don't even know what it means to be loved and seen so that you don't feel shame about it or you don't F it up or you don't sabotage it, right? You don't cause conflicts. So I allowed this love in, but I couldn't. My whole system was fighting because I never experienced it. They say we experience it through our parents, but it's not that. If we can experience it on a much bigger level, right? So I sabotaged it and we broke up. And for me, that was very hard. But this time, I said to myself, Oksana, you've been running all your life into worse relationships into addictions, right? Alcohol, into poor choices. This time you're gonna do things different, especially now that you're a coach and you have a son to take care of. So I came home. I was crying my eyes out, like all these thoughts again came back, suicidal thoughts, depression. What's the point in living? You know, who cares? You're meaningless. And I sat on the kitchen floor and I gave laptop to my son. I said, baby, you blessed be you because today you're gonna get so much cartoon time as you wish to, right? Mommy needs her time. And I sat and I sat and I allowed all those thoughts and emotions to be present with me and I witnessed them all because most of the coaching they teach you pattern interrupt your thoughts. But you know, you can only pattern interrupt things again to a certain degree because you can't take control of everything. It's exhausting. And my whole system went completely like internally and I can't even explain what happened. But after a while, I realized that what I was missing, you know, missing him, missing this love was always in me. And it was a shift in my consciousness. People call it Christ consciousness. Some people call it the truth. Some people call it God, whatever is resonating with you. But I experienced the wholeness within me. And when I walked outside, I swear to God, I go to this forest every day for the past like 4 years. And I looked at it and I was like, I don't recognize this place. Something in me has shifted so much that I don't view anything anymore the same way. And I received a tool which became my purpose work to work with my clients. And suddenly they started going from from cancer to no cancer, from having eczema for 20 years to no eczema, from infertile to birthing a healthy baby boy, from manifesting the soulmates literally the day we speak, from beautiful opportunities. And I truly experienced how this universe work through the body. And this is where my somatic, energetic, emotional work was born, if that makes sense.
It does to me 100%.
You're a
And
healer. You probably know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I understand as well because I think I've gone, no, I will change that. I don't think, I know that I have gone through that as well, through my life of when, I guess, when I thought my life fell apart, it actually fell together,
Oh, I love this sentence. Yes.
right?
Yeah.
When we break apart, sometimes we actually come together. So we need to allow things to fall off of us and fall away from us so that we can recorrelate who we are and what we need to do in our own lives.
Yes.
And I think from the breakdown turns into being the breakthrough.
Yes. Big time.
Such an
Yes.
important and that all comes from, sitting back like you're saying, and really reliving what you've been through, like being honest with yourself, because so many
Yes.
times, I feel that most people fool themselves. They just lie about things to themselves to make themselves feel better. But how do you get through things if you're not really being honest with yourself?
Exactly. And I also feel like people are so scared of those thoughts because they think it's going to take them over. But in fact, everyone has whatever is one person thinking, another person has this thought too. It's just because it's not active in the body, right? There's no story behind it, there's no emotional charge behind it. And most of us are living in between this state of death and life, right? Kind of playing games with ourselves. I'm kind of living, but I'm also not kind of living. This honesty with self. That's why I call myself Fire Muse because I want to get you onto the side where you're like, yes, I'm alive. I can maybe not be as successful, not as pretty, right, as the cover magazine girls, but I am alive because I'm choosing myself every day. And I'm sometimes I also choose to I don't know, not be that bubbly person, right? But just be myself in sadness, and that's okay, right?
But also
And this,
loving who you are, accepting yourself into,
yeah,
which is, I
yeah,
think, the most important segment of it all, right? So you're coming in from a world where if we could stop comparing ourselves to others and be grateful for who we really are, it's a whole different, it's a mind shift at that
yes,
point.
yeah, yeah,
And you know, Oksana, you talk about the Christ consciousness, and I am a firm believer in that. That it's a fifth dimensional frequency in terms of how we feel, how our heart is open, how we see others, and how we see ourselves. So when that happened to you, when you felt that and learned you could help people heal, what modalities came in for you to help heal people? I'm just curious because for me, when I had my DNA upgrade, light weaving has just kicked in as well as light language. Have you had any experience with that?
yes, I have with the light language, but
Light
now
language.
I'm really doing this. It's very simple. Whatever you resist, um, whatever, like you have like when we make the choices from the state of Christ consciousness, which literally in our body feels like it's done, it's peace, it's
Mm,
truth, right? It's just done. It comes, you will get it, you will receive it, right? And whatever we are chasing something, right, we start resisting it at the same time. So for me, Christ consciousness is our truth. It's pretty much the essence of who we are, and kids have it the most and bestest way, right?
absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
when
With
they
no
don't
question.
question. Yeah, but how do I get this? But maybe like that's when they start later on questioning when they're becoming curious, right? My son is a brilliant example, like of Christ consciousness. But like just 3 days ago, I was reading a book to him and he just sits and plays with Lego and he's like, Mommy, you know what? I know how to be a millionaire. I'm like, oh, how's that? Right? He says, well, Mom, if 1 million people is gonna give me 1 year, I'm a millionaire. I said, you're very right, but how are you gonna get those 1 million people to get you 1 million, 1 year each? Just ask, mommy. And I'm like, exactly, because they already have this abundant mindset. It's like those
Absolutely.
ideas come from a pure place, right? That it's done. So
It's true.
yeah,
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. And unfortunately, so many times, the minute they start school and it's conditioned out of them. But
yeah,
until they, have those moments where they see through the veil, they see the other side, they see
yeah,
people that we don't see. So
yeah.
I love dealing with younger children, and I think that's an amazing story.
Yeah, yeah. And another thing, maybe that what happened is that when I help the people go through their biggest fear in the body, so I work somatical as well, to fall into it. So by falling into it, you naturally accept it, so it no longer becomes the dominant frequency in them, and they fall into this Christ consciousness space where they naturally imagine or some thoughts, and I talk to the DNA at that same time to the cells and
Hmm.
send those my thoughts in. I don't know how to explain it, but when I'm in this Christ consciousness, literally, I'm not even in control. So I'm just allowing everything to be sent. And when I see them in wholeness, that's where it clicks together and eczema or whatever just disappears.
I love it. Yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So at what point now did you feel that you have that strength in you? Once you started changing things around, did you actually feel the energies in you that you could do whatever you wanted to do and that you could start changing your life and become the person that you really thought about being or were supposed to be?
Yes, I think it was gradual again after one event to another and after one. But really, when I started to embracing who I am as a woman, is in the past 1, 2 years the most because I can see it as the results of, when our sexuality is suppressed. People think of sexuality as in, you constantly need to have physical intimacy, but really sexual energy is life force energy, and
Mhm.
it's magnetism of a woman. And when I started seeing how men started to respond, before I had abusers and 50-50 men. 50-50 men for me is men who just want to, have the privilege of having a woman but living together like a roommates, being half half, right?
Yeah.
And going to men who adore you and who are protectors and providers and who respect a woman. And of course, I changed how I view the men as well.
Right.
And whenever you're going, everything is handed to you. Whenever you go on a flight, people ask you if you want, if you need assistance. So you become a woman of provision. You are provided for in different forms, right? So when I started seeing the results of how whole I became inside and how it starts to play out in the physical realm, then you start to reflect upon it. Something is different. What was different about it? And I'm a big reflector. I think reflection makes people very wise, first of all, and plus we are then able to teach better way, right? So Glenda, for me, it was very gradual, but the last 1-2 years was the biggest shifts.
I love it. So let's now look at the fact of you've been able to shift yourself and change the woman that you were from the woman who was unworthy, didn't have that control to, really you did all the things to break yourself down. And now you're on the other side of the curve and helping others. What can you say for women that might be watching this and they're not feeling that security in themselves? Let's start talking about ways that we can start helping other people so that they
Mhm.
can start making that shift into themselves. Because it's all about, we have to start changing the way we start looking at ourselves and thinking about ourselves.
Yeah, yeah. I think like you both mentioned about honesty. It's for me that like I couldn't go up to the mirror and say I love you, I love you, right? For me, it was like, okay, where am I at right now? Well, right now I hate my body. Well, can I just be honest with myself that because this is literally the dominant thought, right? And you're honest with it. You don't try to sugarcoat your life. You don't try to be 5 days, 5 years, like almost when I'm going to eat healthy and then I'm gonna be attractive towards the man. I took all this when XYZ out of my life, right? It's like, okay, where I'm now, what's happening in the now? Like what's important to me is the now. There's nothing else apart from that. So, and then I started talking with myself like that as well. Like, okay, does it bother me? And instead of directing or distracting myself with something else, I was like, it bothers me. So I need this to put attention towards it, right? Um, yeah. And also taking ownership in a way, for example, if you always say, men constantly disappoint me, then you need to start taking ownership like this. Instead of saying men constantly disappoint me, I allow men to disappoint me. And then you go down. Because I allow men to disappoint me, I do it because then you're honest with yourself, whatever comes first, because I don't really know what I want. Maybe that's what comes to you. Okay. And I don't know what I want is because I haven't been listening to myself. And maybe you go deeper and I haven't been listening to myself because I don't think I'm important. Okay, can I change this now? That can I listen to myself and ask, okay, what do you want? And maybe it's a little thing, tiny, weeny thing. Like, instead of forcing yourself to go to the gym, maybe you just want to walk, right? So you drill down to a very little thing what you can change just right now because all you have is now. No more this when
Yeah.
things.
Exactly.
And I think that's really what you said, I think is the most important thing. I always say to people when they're looking to go to the gym, people go in and they go in with, such gusto that they're going to change the world. You go in and you work your butt off and probably trying that anyways, and you keep going. And then by the time you're
That's
walking out, you're exhausted, you've done it all, and then the next day, or it's usually 2 days after, all of a sudden you can't walk right now because you're so sore, And what ends up happening is, because you are so sore and not feeling great, you end up actually not going back.
Yeah.
So if you can go to the gym, just even not go to the gym, just start walking. That 5 minute walk, that 10-minute walk, that 15-minute walk. Same
Yeah.
thing at the gym. Go in and spend 10 minutes at the gym and leave, and be happy that you actually made it there.
Yeah.
And that way you come back the next day with feeling good with yourself that you've made it there, and feeling good that you're proud of yourself. The same thing what we talked about earlier, the celebration of life, the celebration of what really went well.
Yeah. Exactly. Meet yourself where you're at,
Right.
and you will stop feeling like somebody's putting pressure on you. The only person who puts pressure on you is yourself, because you expect out of yourself more, because you're somewhere in the future already, right? So when we meet ourselves where we're at, the expectations lower, and you actually excel because you have a pure desire, right? Your feminine aspect comes out because you're like, oh, I'm curious, right, about this. I want to do it. It becomes a choice.
Yeah. And I love that, the power of now, that's
Yeah.
like you talk about, that's all we have. If we think into the future, oftentimes there's fear. If we think into the past, oftentimes there's regret. And we know we can't change the past. We haven't experienced the future. So what other place do you have but the now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And too often we're not, especially in these days, we're not here anyways. People are buried in their phones, on the computer. So
Yes.
even when we're in the now, like here, we're together, we're talking.
Yeah.
But how many times, I'll ask people, if you're sitting around the table with your family or friends, how often are you actually sitting there and talking to each other, and having that phone down and not even paying attention to it?
Yeah.
That's being in the now. And we don't realize how
De-
much it robs us.
Definitely guilty of that still many times. I'm not perfect. I still have
Yeah.
it a lot of the times, but that's true. The time expands when you're connected and devoted to the present moment. Yeah.
And that's when you really can make changes within yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
So, how can we start moving forward to make ourselves more worthy of who we are to ourselves? How do we bring that worthiness out?
I'm trying to think like in one sentence, like what to say about the worthiness.
Well, just tell me, what would you do on a day where you're not feeling good about yourself? You
Yeah.
maybe you start to that day you're putting yourself down. What
Yeah.
if we all have that time where maybe you get dressed in an outfit that really doesn't feel good, and you're winding your way around, and then all of a sudden you go into this spiral. Every
Yeah.
woman has been through that.
Yeah.
Look at
Actually,
ourselves and something doesn't look right, something doesn't feel right, and before you know it, you are knocking yourself down.
yeah.
What do you say?
Um, yeah, so I feel for women, major thing is guilt. And out of guilt, they want to outperform, and out of guilt, they want to be very hard on themselves. Like that was definitely my case. So, for example, today I was quite tired, and
Mm.
if before I would not allow myself to rest during the day, then today I was 3 hours in bed trying to snooze and, just being with myself, because I realized that the more I'm going to push myself, I already know the scenario. If I push myself, it's going to reflect up. So I kind of have this trail of thoughts. I'm going to be very nasty to my son, like out of like this irritation. I'm
Yep.
going to, this energy is going to leak into my business. This energy is going to then leak into other people's lives. And, sometimes as women, we think that if we share our emotions, we actually are dumping our not so nice emotional state on other people. And that's not nice, right? So it's my responsibility to take as fast as I can care of myself, so that I'm also not I'm being the best for myself, and not creating more chaos in my life because of that. So really, like, you need to think, how is the best shortcut, how I'm gonna win. And everyone wins when you win. So take care of that. Yeah.
So feel your body, feel your
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah. Your body is like so important, because your body, if it's tired, it needs rest. That's it. And that's the most important thing. For a woman to go hardcore, like I used to go so hardcore, I was called the machine. Like I would not even feel that I'm exhausted until I was like flat out like a pancake, you know. And then I realized, like, oh my God. And people kept telling me and telling me. And it's very usual for women who work really, really hard, or who are disconnected from the body, the numb, right? Because you have neglected your needs of your body to such a degree that it takes you something really strong to hit you back in to say, like, look, stop, you're burnout already a long time ago, right? So constantly check in with yourself. How is my body feeling? What does my body need? And take care of it.
Yeah, that's great advice, because one of the things that I love is I tell my clients, your body is brilliant. Your body will talk to you if you ask it and if you
Yeah.
listen. So, just lay down in as a light meditation and ask your body what it needs. Start with your toes and go straight up to your crown. Your body's going to tell you. You're going to feel it. It's really an easy thing to do if you're willing to stop and listen for just a few minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just unfortunate how we don't allow ourselves, like to stop in the middle of a day and just either sit, lay down, doesn't matter, but to stop and have, even if you gave yourself 10 minutes of silence in your day,
Mhm.
just to stop and just to breathe, can change everything. And I used to be very guilty of it, of not stopping, not going, because felt that the pressure of always having to do, the guilt
Yes.
that there was always something that had to be done, right? And that proved to me, I've been hit many times, unfortunately, with some things of the body breaking down in some way, and then it forces you. So if you don't do the things, then the universe, the body, will force you and make things happen that you can't do things.
Yeah.
So we either do things for ourselves that allow our body to rest, and if too often we put so many things, stresses on ourselves, that we end up breaking down, and instead of doing what we need to do, we actually lose sight of that, and we end up not doing what we need to do. and
Yeah.
and, and that is really important, that we move forward with that knowledge of stopping for
Yeah.
ourselves and for nobody else, because we can't give on an empty cup. And too often as women, we keep on giving. And I know I'm saying this because, I'm guilty of it. It's, been in the recent while where, it's like, I can't keep going. You can't keep giving when there's nothing left to give.
Mm-hmm.
And we're okay to say no. And I
Yeah.
know how hard that is.
Yeah.
That's a luxury in some of us, right? How do we say
Yes.
no?
Yeah.
I got very comfortable with no. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, next sentence. Yeah. And
But
but it frees you so much. You're right, Glenda, that, once you learn to say it and you take the guilt out of it, it frees you. It's just like absolutely the chains come off. And all of a sudden it's not saying you can't do it if someone asked again, but you can't do it every time if it doesn't fit you, what you love, or your schedule. I mean, just know, done, you know. And I learned it well as a mom. It's just once you say yes, they keep at you, at you, at you. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. And I sat down and it wasn't that I didn't even have time. I'm done now. No, gets really easy after a while.
But here is an interesting fact, that even though we consciously realize we need to rest and say no, what we as women are afraid of is that, well, if I'm going to stop being prideful in a sense of how much I've done. There is a pride attached to it because the whole identity is attached to this. The work you've done, how much you're always on the go, how much nobody knows apart from you know the best, right? There's a lot of pride. So what we are afraid of is not to not do those things, but who we are. If we put that pride down, we don't know who we are. And that's the real self-worth comes from that part, the unseen part, the
Sure.
not the success and this I'm that woman, it was like knowing the best. And you kind of compete with men as well because I know better than you, right? You should follow my lead, right? But that woman who is afraid to put it down, it's just unfamiliar to her body to feel like, oh, if I don't have this protection wall, right? This baggage of goodiness, right? Then I'm too raw naked. Like everyone sees through me and I have insecurities here. And I don't like my insecurities. And they're gonna mimic me or they're gonna belittle me, right? But that's what men want. And that's what people appreciate. And that's how we connect, right? Through this raw nakedness of us.
But do
This
men
juicy
really,
part.
but do men really want that? Men also want women in their lives to be happy
But
because, if you're not
yeah.
happy in your life, it affects them as just as much as you.
Yeah, but this raw nakedness, the juice of a woman, she's self-sufficient here without needing to attach more of her worth through the external stuff and then be protective and build the walls on the heart. In the rawness, it doesn't mean that she's sitting in her insecurities. It means that she accepts her insecurities. So they no longer become insecurities. She's just like, this is, you know, I do have a crooked nose, and I'm not gonna go to the first this whatever person to fix my nose, right? To become always better to meet the expectations of the society. She is who she is, and if she loves, she does it from love, right? With those things, and men want this realness. But I'm talking about men who are heart-centered provider men, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise all the celebrities, the gloomy bloomy people and all the like beautiful smart people and very successful, they will be in very happy relationships, but it doesn't work. Men, and from my experience I can tell you, men want realness and men want vulnerability. And vulnerability is not like, let me dump all my emotions on you so you can fix me. Vulnerability is like, yes, this is where I'm at, but I'm learning, I'm growing, or I need this help. You know what you need, right? And this is where your respect towards the men can come in, because you are able to communicate clearly. Because here in this camouflage, you don't know how to communicate your needs because you're the self-sufficient woman who knows the best, right? So
Yeah.
your communication is also like that. No, don't tell me, I know best, right?
It's true. It's true. But we have to start learning that we don't need to be fixed, but we need to, just what you said,
Yes,
we need to be able
embrace.
to communicate what it is that we need.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably one of the hardest things for us.
Very much, very hard. If you don't know who you are, you don't know what you want. When you don't know what you want, you don't know what you need. And when you don't know what you need, you're not in tune with the body. When you're not in tune with the body, you're burnout.
Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
it's just a vicious cycle. It
It is.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there. I certainly understand that.
so
Yes.
let's find ways now that we can become more sure of ourselves and I think that's part of it, right? If we're not sure of ourselves, I'm meaning sure of feeling comfortable with being vulnerable. It's,
Yeah.
like there's nothing wrong. And I think that's how we're starting to shift a little bit. So I sort of see vulnerability coming out a lot more nowadays than ever before. But, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay to admit it on top of it all. Just
Yeah.
like I said, a breakdown doesn't necessarily mean that you're breaking down. It actually could be that you're breaking through.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And if we
Exactly.
can change the way we look at things, then Dr. Dwyer said, then we
Wayne
can,
Dyer, yeah.
when
Yeah.
we change the way we look at things, and the things we look at change. And it's so true.
And
Yeah.
I think vulnerability is the new superpower. I really do. None of us are perfect. None of us have the right answers. And even if we have the right answers for ourselves, it's not for everyone. And
Yeah.
and what people have to understand is that acceptance that everyone has a different opinion, not to judge, and so for me, if I don't like it, I admit it. If it doesn't work for me, I admit it. And it is what it is, but it's mine to own.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the superpower is just being real about it.
Yes. And it's okay not to know. That was
mhm.
a big thing. Well, how can I not know? I'm not a stupid person, right? And then deep down, insecurity. I'm so stupid. I don't know. So let me just say I know it. Yeah. The
But I
syndrome
think
of
that's
high
a really
achievers. I know everything.
right. But I think the greatest form of in also in relationships is being able to admit and being open that we help each other. So what you don't know, I find that in friendships as well. What you don't know, I know. What I don't know, you know. Let's help
Yeah.
build each other up.
Yes. Actually, for this transformation, I never really had very close people to even hug or to talk to. And this transformation that I received a real friend with whom, like, we don't allow ourselves to be in a victim mode, but also we are there for each other. This true vulnerability that I know all of her insecurities, she knows mine. I'm the first person she calls when something happens, and I'm the first person to tell her. And I've never experienced a friendship. For me, friend is really truly like not just like every person you meet is a friend. Oh, hi friend, hi
No,
friend. For me, it's no, right? But there's this word is overused a lot. Oh, my friends. I'm like, how many do you have? Like, like everyone is your friend, right? I'm like, I have like two friends. That's it. And my childhood family, which I love dearly, right? And that for me is more than enough because I went deaf to the people, right? So for this transformation, I learned also how to be vulnerable with friendship and not always go like, I'm moving to another country, right? That was something. Okay, see ya. And that's I don't care if you don't talk, right? So I allowed myself to get into being vulnerable and not being perfect and not be rejected for it. Yeah.
well, here's the thing. Okay, so you have a friend, and friends are just that we don't need to speak to each other every day. You
Yeah.
know that if that friend needs you, they phone you. And even if you haven't spoken in 6 months, you pick up the phone and you just pick up where you
Yeah.
left off. There's nothing about that you have to start talking and start making, excuses of why.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's part of the thing. And it's a beautiful thing when you can just pick up the pieces and just start talking and you're real with that person.
Oh gosh, Glenda, that's such a perfect way to say that, because a friend of mine that I have had since we were in seventh grade called me the other day. We hadn't talked in 6 months, right? But it's like there's no time between us. So
Exactly.
I saw her phone. I picked it up. She goes, I just have to vent for a minute. She vented for 15 minutes. We hung up. But I listened. I mean, I don't have to go into this big to do. How are you? Where you been? Blah, 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 blah. I just listened. I held space. She hung up. We haven't talked again for a week.
But that's what a friend is. A friend is,
Absolutely.
so many times, and it was funny when I went through my divorce the first time,
Mhm.
and I lost most of my girlfriends.
Mhm.
Mm.
I was going through some really bad time. I had nothing. I lost everything. And and I had two babies and I had lots to try. I had to find ways that I could feed my children. It was a really hard thing, and finding a job and rechanging my life, and everybody walked away. Why? Because I wasn't that same person right now. I was in breakdown. And
Yeah.
instead of people being there to hold space, to listen to me when I needed to vent or cry, and just to be there and saying, you know what, you could do this or whatever, they left. And that's when I really realized who my friends were. I had one person at that point that
Wow.
was there. And it was
Yeah.
a real dark time. But it shows you, and it showed me that whenever major situations have ever happened in my life, that's why I don't have a lot. I have dear friends. It's
Yeah.
just those ones that I know Everybody's there when you're going to party. Geez, it's the greatest time to be around. But what happens when the time gets hard? Who's around then? And that's when you know who your friends are. That's when you know you can pick up the phone and you can phone that person who will listen to you vent, cry, and whatever.
Yeah.
You don't need to explain yourself. They'll just hold space for you. And that's really what it's about. So as we're getting to the end of this session, boy, it went by fast.
It did, yes.
Anna, how can we explain to ourselves to love ourselves more? To what golden nugget can you give to a woman who might be going through that hard time when she's trying to maybe find herself, hold herself, whatever it is? What can you give us?
There's so many things I would like to give, but let me think of just one thing. It's
Hard.
like
Yes,
crush that one thing, right?
wonderful.
Probably very simple, but really slow down. Like slowing down is going higher, and slow down and find this connection, intimacy with yourself by simply, even when you feel sadness, ask where in your body you feel the sadness, put your hand there, acknowledge it, and just be with it. Like those things, doesn't, you don't need to dig always up what's up with me, what's wrong with me, or where is it coming from, is it when the boyfriend left, or is it from my father, mother, who never loved me. Just simply acknowledge it through placing your hand wherever you feel the sadness and just being there for a minute with this, and just start moving your body the way it wants to move, because femininity in a woman, well, femininity only in a woman, is really you feeling relaxed in your body, right? And the more you allow this emotion in your body to move through it the way it wants to move, even with your body movement, right? The more you accept yourself as you are, and you realize that all the support, all the safety is in here, right? It can never be in a man, even in a physical occasion, or it's in you and God, right? It's literally here. So give your body the most biggest connection that you can have by just simply being aware of it.
Beautiful. It's beautiful. It's a great nugget to be giving. Slow down. And we never finish a session of Let's Get Real without our dear Nicole.
Oh, Glenda, thank you. I think Glenda, you just mentioned it about being authentic. And I think that's so important because our authentic self changes so often. Who I was in my 20s, who I was in my career, who I was as a mom, to who I am now. I'm not the same person I was 5 minutes ago because I learn things, I absorb things, and I think about it. So your authentic self is going to change many times over the course of your lifetime. It's also going to continue. And that's the beauty of it is I think we've come to a time as women, forward thinking women, that even at my age, I the bad word, age, yeah. I am so thrilled with myself at this point
Yeah.
that I am able to morph into who I am, deal with the gifts that have been given to me, and change my life yet again into something that I love, I desire, and that I created for me. And that makes me so happy, is that I'm doing something I absolutely love now. So here I am again at this age, recreate. People always ask me, are you retired? It's like, oh no, my gosh, no, I recreated myself. We all have that ability, and we will morph so many times over our lifetime, and it's all correct. Whoever you feel then, just be that person.
I love it.
Me too.
Thank
Yes.
you. Thank you so much.
Oksana, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's really been an awesome conversation, and I hope those that are watching have learned a little bit. And, it comes all back to the same thing, to love and treasure yourself, because you are authentically beautiful in your own skin. And we just got to be, stop and be grateful for who we are and for what we have. Thank you for joining us today on Let's Get Real. Comment below. Tell us what you think. Give us your greatest takeaway today, and let it be so it will be. That's all it is. Thanks so much.